We'll give people just a couple of more minutes, see if anybody else is trying to get logged on into Zoom or over on Facebook Live, and then we'll get started with today's program. Well, while we're waiting for people to get logged on and for everybody to get situated, I'll just go ahead and do a couple of the technical things. At the bottom of your screen, if you will scroll your mouse down, you'll notice that it says participants, and you can find your name over on the right-hand side. There's also a place for you to click chat. But you can change your name if you only want your first name showing, or if you'd prefer to be called Mrs. L, for example, you can go ahead and rename yourself. And then if you have questions, if you'll click on the chat bubble over on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see something that says Zoom Webinar Chat. On the bottom left, it says 2. And it says all panelists. If you will click the drop down arrow, my husband Dane is going to be my question monitor today. If you will just click on his name, Dane Lytle, he will be the only person who sees your question. And then after my talk, he'll go ahead and unmute himself and ask the question on your behalf. But you can type those questions in at any time during today's program. This is being streamed live on Facebook. It is also being recorded, so it will show up on the We Are Worthy Summit website, but none of the questions will show up. It will just be the video recording of me talking with you all this morning. All right, well, I want to thank you for joining Redefining Momhood from Infertility to Host Mom this morning. I just want to remind you that you can join in chat by scrolling over the bubble at the bottom. And if you would like to change your name, you can go ahead and do that by clicking on participants and renaming yourself. But we'll go ahead and get started on Redefining Momhood. And I would just like to tell you a little bit about myself this morning and my childless not by choice journey before we get started. My husband and I tried for 10 years to have a baby. We did 7 rounds of fertility treatments. None of them worked. I was never able to get pregnant. And then we also looked into lots of different ways to adopt, from international to domestic through child services. We even looked into embryo adoption a little bit, but nothing really ever felt right for both of us. And so at the very end of 2013, my husband told me that he would like us to just start enjoying our life the way it was. And so we walked into 2014 deciding that we were going to go ahead and live a childless life and not spend 10 more years trying to have a baby, but just enjoy the life that we had. Now for me, I was okay with stopping with treatments and not pursuing adoption, but I was having a really hard time with not being a mom. And so I made a resolution at the beginning of 2014 that I was just going to accept that I already was a mom and I was going to enjoy my life as the mom I was. And at that time, I was a dog mom. And I know not everybody thinks that's a real mom, but for me, I decided that being Maddie's dog mom was going to be my mom role. And so I just embraced that wholeheartedly. Well, fast forward a little bit, at the end of 2014, my husband and I took a cooking class. We were trying to do some things just for the two of us. And I was actually in a technology class at the time, and I skipped the class that evening, which was the first time in my life that I had ever skipped class. but I am so glad that I did, because at that cooking class, we met the local coordinator of a foreign exchange program and her exchange daughter. And they came in a little bit late. They were frazzled. My husband's a lot more outgoing than I am, and he asked them to join our table. And as we got to talking to them and found out that she was hosting this student, we kind of looked at each other and said, we could do this. And our local coordinator said she thought that we would be great at it. They are always looking for host parents. So we asked her a little bit about, what does it really mean to be a host parent, and how do you become a host parent? And so basically what a host mom or a host dad is, if you're not sure, is you take on the parental role for this student when they come to study here in the United States. They're high school students. They range anywhere from 14 to 18 years old. Our student Bruna was 16 when she arrived, but turned 17 very shortly after. And your job is to just accept them into your family and treat them like you're their parent, like they're your kid, for the time frame that they're with you. Which Bruna was with us for 1 semester, so she was with us for about 6 months. Some students come for an entire school year, and so they're with you for 9 to 10 months, from August to June or so. Now, your role as a host parent is pretty simple in what they expect. You're expected to provide 3 meals a day and to provide a bed. You don't have to have a separate room. They could share a room with someone, but the student does have to have their own bed. Now, that is just the bare minimum of what they say that you have to provide. Obviously, if you're going to welcome this kid into your home, then you're going to give them a lot more than that. But you're not supposed to provide medical insurance. They have that. You don't have to spend a ton of money unless you just choose to do some things with the student, like vacations and such. Now, how we became host parents, once we learned what the criteria were, was there was some paperwork that we had to fill out. So we went home that night, and I found the paperwork and got everything completed. And you submit this paperwork along with some photos of your home to show that the student is going to have a room and what your house looks like, because the kiddo is going to get this. And then they also do an in-home study where they just swing by. My local coordinator swung by. She talked with Dane and I a little bit. She looked around our house. She met Maddie, just so that they can see that there is a place for the student to stay. And the approval process was really simple. We got approved, and then it was on to deciding which student we wanted to host. Because the difference, I guess, if you were to compare this with adoption, is that we got to choose the student that we were going to host. And especially for my husband, it was a big deal that this kid be a good addition to our family. He always says we had a pretty good thing going, and so he wanted to make sure that if we brought someone else into our home, that it was going to be a positive addition to our family. And so our local coordinator had given us a few applications, and we had looked through them. And as we were talking with her about the kids, I told you, I'm a dog mom. Dane takes his dog dad role pretty seriously. Maddie's a big part of our family. And so there was a student who said that she was afraid of big dogs. But honestly, Maddie is a big dog in a little dog's body. She has a lot of energy. She has a big bark, and she is going to be jumping on you and in your lap. She's allowed anywhere in the house. So I knew she was going to be going into the student's room, probably jumping on their bed. And so we knew that if she was scared of dogs, this wasn't going to work. Our local coordinator assured us that if it didn't work, a student could be moved to a different home. But honestly, for my husband and I, we thought once this kid is in our home, this needs to stick. They're already going to be away from their family, halfway across the world, don't know anybody. We didn't want them to have to change homes. And so we decided that it would be better to say no than to accept a student that we just weren't sure was going to be a fit with our family. So the coordinator kept looking for students, and she sent over Bruna's letter to me. She said, I have the perfect kid for you guys. Here is her letter, her application. I read it. I felt like it was going to be a good fit. My husband, the first thing he did was went to social media and looked her up on the internet, and her picture showed up, her profile picture. She was holding a dog. And so we decided that, yeah, this is the right kid for us. And we said that we wanted to host Bruna. So I think that decision was made around December. So there was about a month there where we were trying to get approved as host parents and then find the student that we wanted to host. So before Bruna arrived, we did start making some connections with her. We made Facebook friends. We exchanged email addresses. We even Skyped a couple of times. We met her sister and her parents in Brazil. We were watching our nieces for a few days while over the break, we were in Oklahoma and we were spending some special time with them. So we actually Skyped and let her meet our nieces so that we could start making a connection before she ever arrived. She arrived at the very end of December, right after we arrived home from Christmas, and they lost her bags. And so when she arrived here, she didn't have any of her luggage. We were trying to explain that that happens. She spoke English beautifully. However, she was overwhelmed with the fact that she was only hearing English. She was meeting these people that she really didn't know. We had just met over Skype. And so, you know, the adjustment period, there was an adjustment period. She did have a bit of being homesick. But a couple of pieces of advice that I got before Bruna ever arrived that really helped us during that time. One, our local coordinator told us, hug that kid the minute they arrive. When they get off the plane, you give him or her a hug and tell them that you're so glad that they're here. She reminded us that these kids were going to be away from their parents, maybe for the first time, and that they needed human contact. And so go ahead and get the first hug out of the way, because if you don't, then it becomes a time of, okay, should I hug him now? Is now the right time to hug? Have I waited too long? And honestly, if she hadn't given me that advice, I probably wouldn't have hugged Bruna from the get-go. I hug my family, but I'm not just big on hugging people. But Dane and I both gave her a hug. She surprised me a little bit because she gave me a traditional Brazilian greeting, and so she kissed me on both cheeks, which I wasn't expecting. So it was a little awkward at first. But we just kept hugging every evening before we would go to bed. I would hug her, you know, tell her I was so glad that she was here. And eventually the hugs weren't awkward anymore. And she really did. Bruna is a touchy-feely person. I guess you would have to kind of see how your student was, but she needed that interaction. The other piece of advice that was really good, my mom gave me, she told me, do not treat this kid like a house guest. She said, you are going to want to take care of her and you will do everything for her when she arrives, but she's going to be with you for 6 months and that will get old. And I was so glad that she gave me that advice because she's right. I would have treated her like a house guest and I would have waited on her hand and foot. And then as we got more comfortable with each other, it would have perhaps become irritating that I was doing everything. And so from the get-go, Bruna had a couple of chores. She was expected to make her bed, and she was asked to do the dishes after dinner and to put them in the dishwasher. She thought it was pretty amazing that we had warm water in the kitchen. In Brazil, it's cold water, and Bruna hates being cold. And so she didn't mind doing the dishes because she could do them in warm water. It was really interesting for us to talk about what was different with Brazil versus here in the United States. Now, I've talked a little bit about our local coordinator, and she was a part of our community. You know, obviously Dane and I are childless. I was a teacher at the time, and so I did have some connections within the school system, but I had never had a kid in school. We didn't have people who had kids around us. So I've heard some people say that they're worried about having a student because they don't have a community, they don't have connections. Well, the great thing about our organization, and I'm sure all exchange organizations, is that you build a community with others who are hosting students. So we had our local coordinator who was hosting the student that we met when we went to the cooking class. That student actually went to the school where I taught, and I didn't realize that at the time. Then another student from Germany came over, and we met a couple, a childless couple, and honestly, we have become really good friends with them. We still keep in touch with them. And then there was another program, and that student also went to the school where I taught and had met the young lady that we met at the cooking class. And so we connected with her host family as well. And so we did have a community of people to help us. And, if we had had an emergency, we could have called our local coordinator for help, because you can't just leave the kids with anyone. It does have to be somebody who has had a background check and that they know is, safe for them to stay with. And then also, of course, her family back in Brazil was part of our community. I just started posting pictures. I love pictures, as you can probably tell from behind me. I just started posting pictures on Facebook. I immediately took a picture when she arrived. Well, I asked Dane to take a picture of us at the airport. And I posted it on Facebook and said she got here safely. And honestly, when Bruno was here, I posted daily. I posted quite a few pictures. I would say what we were doing that day. And her family in Brazil, I started getting all kinds of friend requests because they were hearing that I was posting what was going on, and they wanted to know. And so that was a great way for us to keep in contact and for them to know what was going on. Bruna was pretty good about talking with her family, but I know one of the host moms that I talked with, she had an exchange son, and his mom said that she was grateful for the emails and such, because being a teenage boy, he wasn't as good about communicating. So it was really, really nice to be able to have that technology available. And then, of course, Skype. We would always say hello when Bruna Skyped her parents, and we did have to make sure that we made time for her to do that. Every now and then, we would be so busy that we wouldn't give enough time for her to contact her family, and she would get a little homesick, and we would realize she was getting a little sad and needed some time to talk to them. So we would say hello, but then we would leave them alone so that they could talk, and she often spent an hour to 2 hours on Skype with them, letting them know everything that was going on. And it was just really wonderful that she could do that, and being able to actually see them helped her to not be quite so homesick. Sorry, I have to look at my notes and just make sure that I am talking about everything. Okay, so now to the really good part, and about our hosting experience, and about how this hosting experience helped me to keep redefining momhood. So I said, I was a dog mom, and I was still a dog mom when Bruna was here. Maddie went a ton of places with us, but I also became a host mom. And what the experience with Bruna allowed me was to do some of the things that I never thought that I would be able to get a chance to do. So, like, it wasn't Bruna's first day of school, but it was my first time to enroll a two-legged kiddo into school. And, my husband and I both went and helped her pick out her classes. And, he was the one who had to contact the principal several times so that she could get a locker. When she went and joined something called the agency, I got to be the carpool mom, and I got to pick other kids up and take them and coordinate who was going to bring the students home. So all of those firsts that I didn't think I would ever get to have, I was getting to have them with her. And I think one of the reasons that it was so special was, even though this was a plan B, this wasn't something my husband and I honestly had ever even considered. It wasn't, when we were going through it, it wasn't a backup plan. I was not experiencing these things thinking, wow, I really wish that I could have done this with my own kid. I wish we would have had a biological kid or adopted. This would have been great if we could have done this with our own kid. We were experiencing it as we are doing these things with our own kid. Bruna is still a part of our family, and she is our exchange daughter. I am her host mom, but if you drop those adjectives, it was just a daughter-mom relationship when she was here. And I was never sad that it wasn't with our kid, because it was. And we jumped in wholeheartedly, my husband and I. I told you you're supposed to provide 3 meals and a bed. We did a lot more than that. Bruna had wanted to come to the United States and study since she was in 7th grade. She had been saving money, she and her parents, for years to send her to have this experience. And so we wanted to make sure that it was the best experience possible for her. And then we also knew that this was a gift for us. We had a 2-legged kid in our house for 6 months, and we wanted to make sure we made the most of it. And so we went on all kinds of vacations. Things that Dane and I had wanted to do that we just hadn't made the time to do, we went ahead and did it. So we started off in Asheville, and that's where we spent New Year's Eve. We went to Washington, D.C. We went to Atlanta. We went to Chicago and saw the Green River. Bruna loves all things Irish, and so we even got to see the parade. We went back to Oklahoma and had a big party there so that she could meet all of her Oklahoma family. We went to Disney World. That was an incredible experience, to be able to go to Disney World with your kid. Bruna turned into a little kid when we were at Disney World. She wanted to meet the princesses. When we were at Epcot, she always wanted coins so that she could put them in the machine and get the penny to go flat. We watched the fireworks over Cinderella's castle. It was just an amazing, amazing experience. And then we also went to New York City with her. And so we did spend quite a bit of money while she was here, because we were trying to have those experiences. But again, you don't have to do that. We also did just everyday things. We made s'mores. We went to traditional American restaurants. We took walks around downtown. We watched lots of movies. We introduced her to The Breakfast Club and Top Gun and all those American classics. Everything was new for her. And honestly, it was new for us too, because we were seeing it through her eyes. I started aerial yoga because of Bruna. She had done aerial silks back in Brazil and wanted to continue. My husband did some research, and the closest thing he could find was aerial yoga. But the teacher did an aerial dance, a special class with Bruna and several other girls. And then they had a performance, a recital at the end of that. And that was an awesome experience too. I had gone to dance recitals for my nieces, and I loved it. But I have to say, when I was there, a lot of times it was, I can't wait till I can do this with my own kid. When we were watching Bruna perform, and my husband had his video camera, and we had invited people to come see her, it was cool to be in the parent role and to be able to be watching your own kid perform in something like that. And then she also went to prom, so we got to pick out the prom dress, and she couldn't drive, obviously, when she was here. I did check into a limo, but that was just cost prohibitive. We decided that we just couldn't do that. So we were her chauffeurs. Luckily, Bruna was not embarrassed. She invited a girlfriend to go along with her, so we didn't have to worry about anything. We were there. She hung out with her friend at prom. We took them to the bowling after party. It was a lot of fun. And again, one of those things that I really didn't think I'd get to experience firsthand. So It was an amazing, amazing time for us. It was amazing, and I do say it was the best 6 months of our life. However, I don't want you to get the impression that it was perfect. It was not perfect. We did have to discipline Bruna a few times. I remember one time in particular, at the agency, they were to put their cell phones away, which is great. They needed to be engaged in what they were doing. However, I had asked Bruna to make sure to text me and let me know who was bringing them home that evening. And I expected her to be home at a certain time, and I wasn't receiving the text message, and I wasn't sure who exactly was bringing her, or if they were able to, if I was supposed to go pick her up. And I was getting very nervous and anxious because, I mean, as my husband said, yes, we are her American parents. We were responsible for her. But if something happened to her, we were the ones who were going to have to let her Brazilian parents know that something happened to her. So communication was really important to us. Well, she made it home just fine. But we had to have a serious conversation about, if I tell you to text me, you text me. And yes, your agency leader may say that you need to put your cell phone away, but you need to tell him that my host mom asked me to please text her and let her know who is taking me home this evening, and I need to do that very quickly. And if he has a problem with that, then we'll talk with him about that. So we did have to, and we had to have that conversation a couple of times about the texting. I also remember one time we were having a conversation, and before I knew it, "Don't roll your eyes at me" had flown out of my mouth, and I thought, wow, definitely comfortable here. I have taken on a mom role, and I hope this doesn't cause problems. It was a little awkward for a couple of days. Dane took Bruna to school, and so he got to talking to her. She thought we were mad at her. We thought she was mad at us. Honestly, everybody was fine. It was just that we had to have some difficult conversations, and I had to let her know that it wasn't appropriate for her to roll her eyes at me, and I didn't appreciate that. So you do have to be willing to have some tough conversations with the kids, but if you've developed a relationship with them, I mean, like I said, we had hugged her from day one. We had told her how much we enjoyed her being there, and honestly, our relationship did develop into love, and by the time she left, we were able to tell her that we loved her, and she was able to tell us that she loved us back, because we really had become a family. So in any kind of family, in any kind of serious relationship you have, there's going to be times where you have to have hard conversations. So that brings us to June, when it was time to say goodbye, although we said it was time to say see you later, because we promised Bruna that we would see each other again. Now, she did have an exit meeting through her time here. There were 2 or 3 times where we actually had to drive over to the Atlanta area, because that was where the coordinator for this region was, and all of the exchange students would get together and they would have gatherings, but they also touched base with them, which is one thing I didn't mention. They touched base with us once a month and with Bruna once a month. She was able to talk or email and let them know what was going on, and then we did that same thing. That way, if there were any issues that she wasn't comfortable talking with us about, she could let the local coordinator know. And that would be a way for a student, if they were just really unhappy, to say that they wanted to be moved to a new host family, or if a host parent was having issues and didn't know how to talk about it with the kid, they could talk to their local coordinator and get some help with that. And at her, the last meeting, we weren't allowed to be in there when they were talking to the kids, but they're trying to help them realize that there's going to be an adjustment period when they go back home. You know, they've been gone for 6 months, and things will have changed. And a lot of these kids, they're going back to countries that do not have the luxuries that we have here in the United States. And, you know, some of them have gotten real used to the hot water in the kitchen and things like that. And they may not be super excited to go back to where it's so poor. Yes, they want to see their family, but then they also have to leave their family here. But one of the things I think that they talked to them about was that, you know, you may or may not keep a relationship with these people who have been your parents for the last several months. You know, some people, they move on, they didn't have a major connection. You know, our local coordinator told us about a couple of students that just did not connect with. You know, one young man was here to go to school. He didn't want to be a part of the family. He was just here to go to school. But usually there is a connection. And we've stayed in touch with Bruna, and then the students that I've told you about, all those families have stayed in touch with their students, and they have all come back to visit. One of them even did all the paperwork and got everything where she could attend college here in the United States. Now, they do have to go back for 1 year to their home country before they could go to college, because they have to get a new visa and all those kinds of things. But for Bruna and for my husband and I and Maddie, we had become a family. And so, like I said, we stayed in touch. She has visited us several times. And then we also went down to Brazil for my 40th birthday last year and got to meet in person her Brazilian parents and Brazilian family. It's a really, really amazing experience. They had a surprise party for me. And so when I showed up at their home that evening, it was our entire family and friends there. It was Hello Kitty themed because I love Hello Kitty. And one of the most amazing lines at that party was, all of the parents are together. And they had all four of us, Bruna's parents, plus me and Dane, sit together and took pictures and got pictures with Bruna in them as well. And so we just have a huge extended family now because we went to a cooking class and we decided that we would take the leap and host a foreign exchange student. And like I said, it was one of the best decisions that we have ever made. Well, at this point, I would like to find out from Dane if anybody has asked any questions, if there's anything that I can answer or Dane can answer. He said he'd be happy to pipe in and give his opinion if you would like it.
No questions yet.
No questions yet. Okay.
No questions, Brandi. However, what I would like to say is that I am absolutely fascinated by it. It was never something Andrew and I considered, although of course we would be considering being a host mum, not
Yes.
a host mom.
Yes.
However, I'm sure there are programs like this back in the UK, and we just had no idea that this was something that you could do. And actually, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, if only we had known. Because some of the experiences that you're talking about are absolutely brilliant, and I would love to have experienced some of those things. I did have to giggle. I was glad that my mute was on. I did have to giggle when you were talking about the "don't roll your eyes at me." That was a classic. And also, I think it's wonderful that when you were going out and about and just doing some of the normal things that you and Dane take for granted, that you were seeing them through a new, fresh pair of eyes, and that pair of eyes would have been so excited about what they were doing. You know, I mean, we think about doing the washing up with hot water, and it's a case of what?
Right.
But it's something as simple as that being an amazing thing. You know, and it just, I think it probably reinvigorates you and stuff, doesn't it?
It really does. One of the things I didn't mention was Bruna was amazed at squirrels. we have squirrels all over the place here in South Carolina and Oklahoma. They run around. It's no big deal. She had never seen a squirrel live and in person, and she thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
When we went to DC, there was this animal in the Natural History Museum that was stuffed, and Dana and I were like, wow, what is that? And she said, oh, we have those all over the place in Brazil. And it was no big deal to her whatsoever. And so it really is, you know, realizing that some of these things that you take for granted, the leaves changing in the fall, you know, they have those types of trees in Brazil. So you get to see your space through new eyes, and it helps you to appreciate some of those things that you might take for granted because it's just the way it is where you live.
Yeah, most definitely. And as for the fact that you all still keep in contact, that you were making friends while she was with you, with her extended family through Facebook, and then to be able to go and spend your 40th birthday with them, you know, and all be together, that's choking me up quite a bit, actually, talking about it.
It was quite an incredible experience. I did not expect the surprise party. And then, like I said, when they said all of the parents are here, Bruno's parents are very special people. Anybody who could send their kid to live with someone else and trust you that much is special. But they just welcomed us, and they did know our story. Obviously, I'm quite open about our story, but they knew that we couldn't have kids. And so they knew that, you know, Maddie was our kid and that Bruno would be the only two-legged kid. And they knew our nieces and nephews were important. And so they did realize how important this experience was to us. But Bruno's mom said that she always knew that Bruno was for the world and that she was going to have to let her go and go out and be, because she's a big spirit. And so that was pretty incredible. But, you know, the other host moms that I connected with, they've talked to the host parents, whether they be in Germany or whatever country, Italy. And so you really do make a connection with these people, and they understand what a big deal it is for you to take care of their child for, you know, months and to love them. And so it's just an amazing experience. I really would encourage, even if you think you might be interested, I would encourage people to research it more. There's a document I know that Nikki's going to get on the Summit website, and I have some links to my blog. Like if you want to hear more about the cooking class or read a little bit more about our host parenting journey, you can. And then there's some links to get you to various agencies, because I would encourage you to research agencies and find one that you feel comfortable with. And I will say the legitimate agencies, they won't pay you. You do this because you want to, you volunteer to do this. If you find an agency that says that they'll pay you to be a host parent, I would encourage you to just move on and look for a different agency.
That's a very good point. And I know that at the end, we're going to mention a waiver as well about the advice you're giving. If you don't have that to hand, Brandi, don't worry, because I've got it on my screen so I can read it out for you on your behalf.
Okay.
Just to clarify that. And before I mute myself, we do have one question, which was, did it take long to adjust? Hang on a minute, my screen's just jumped. Did it take long to adjust to having another person in your home, however much that was wanted? I thought about doing this a while ago, but I've lived on my own for some time, and so not quite sure if I could adjust myself. I really like the idea that you've joined a whole new community of host parents, shared experiences, support, the way that other people have had their own children get as well. So I'm going to mute myself now whilst you answer that and comment on that.
That is an excellent question. The adjustment period, yes, Dane and I were very excited to have someone, to have this kid in our home. But you're right, it is a new person. And even though you have Skyped and emailed and you know a little bit about them, you're pretty much strangers when they come into your house. And so there definitely was an adjustment period for us. Now, we were so excited, and I was so excited, that one of the things that it was hard for me to, I knew that Bruno was going to be homesick, but in my excitement, it's hard for you to really understand how this kid feels. And so we were walking by her room one day, and she had left the door open because I think she wanted us to see and to talk, but she didn't know how to talk about it. But she was crying. And, you know, at first you're thinking, should I go in? And we did. I went and got Dane, and we went and talked to her. We got her to Skype with her family, and it was much better. But I think the advice that my mom gave me of not treating the student like a guest, a house guest, was important, because we just started developing these new routines from the beginning. I asked her to help me with the dishes. We told her we wanted her to make her bed, and some of those things were also in the application about what her chores would be. We did not just kind of uproot our whole life at the beginning. However, we had just arrived back from Oklahoma. We were exhausted. I had gotten sick. So, you know, we had to go to the doctor. When we picked her up, we went home to watch a movie. We all fell asleep on the sofa. But we just kind of did what we do and made sure that we were talking to each other and to Bruna about all of our expectations. And I can tell you one story that I heard was a lady said to her local coordinator, "You have got to get this kid out of my house. I'm done. I'm tired. I do not want this student in my house anymore. You have got to get her out." And so the local coordinator was talking to her and trying to figure out what the matter was. Well, the student was doing laundry, but she was throwing in like one article of clothing into the washing machine. And it was driving her host mom crazy because it was just so wasteful, and she just did not want that. The problem was she didn't talk to the student and tell the student that she didn't like that. So Dane and I are kind of particular about laundry, and I'm pretty particular about my washing machine. And so we did Bruna's laundry for her. It was, you know, she said, "Oh, teach me how to do this." And we're like, "It's fine. It's not a big deal. Just get your dirty clothes into the hamper for us." So I think what you have to realize is that, yes, this is going to be different. There is going to be someone else in my space, and you have to figure out what bothers you. So, for example, you know, Bruna always made her bed. She wasn't the neatest person. My husband and I are extremely neat. Well, every now and then, my husband worked out of the house. He would go into her room and he would pick up. And if dirty clothes hadn't got to the hamper, he would put them in the hamper. And if she hadn't thrown away her water bottle, he would throw away her water bottle. And I was like, "Dang, that is her room. You know, you need to be careful about her privacy." And he said, "No, this is our house. She is our exchange daughter. And if I can't go into her room, then there's a problem." He's like, "If it was our own biological kid, I'd have no problem going into their room. So I'm going to go into her room and pick up if it's bothering me." And then like the talking to her about the texting and things of that nature, I think you just have to be willing to have some difficult conversations. I am a very shy person, so it did take me a little while to warm up to Bruna. When we were driving back, we were in separate cars driving back from Charlotte, and my husband had Bruna ride with me, and I think it was on purpose so that it would make me talk to her, because that's the only way that you're going to really get over the awkwardness and that adjustment period. For us, I would say it probably took a couple of weeks to maybe a month before we really felt comfortable with each other. And the "don't roll your eyes at me," I think that was about 3 months in. Now, it wasn't that we weren't having honest conversations, but that was when I obviously had gotten really comfortable and was able to just say whatever I needed to Bruna. So I hope that was a long answer, but I hope that I answered your question. Dane, are there any other questions?
No, she
Okay.
said thank you very much for the insight and strategies.
Okay, all right. Well, again, I want to thank you all so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to Redefining Momhood from Infertility to Host Mom. I would like to take a moment to thank the summit sponsors. Without their support and generosity, the summit would not have been possible and certainly wouldn't have been as much of a success. And then I'd also just like to remind you that you can find details about all of the sponsors on the summit website, and then that document with links to my blog site, as well as links to some hosting agencies that I found will be there if you would like to do some more research. If you do have any other questions as you do research, please feel free to contact me. All of my contact information is on my website, notsomommy.com. Thank you so much again for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.